I'm going to go over today with you the process of how we raise our queens, starting with how we create our starter nucs and finish our colonies, all the way through the process of pulling the queens at the end. I'll give you a little, just a overhead simplified process of how we do it. I'm going to create some more videos later of a little more detail of each process. But this will give you a good idea of our process. I think it's a pretty simplified process compared to a lot of other people, the way that they do it. Works for us. We raise good queens from it, and I think it's about as simple as you can do. I'm not able to spend multiple days with these queens out here, so I've got it figured out the way that it best suits my schedule, where I can graft one day a week and pull queens one day a week and place cells into starter nucs or splits or new colonies or whatever we're doing with them. But I kind of got this built around my weekly schedule of grafting. I graft every Tuesday, graft one day during the week, and I pull cells and use the cells on the weekends, on Friday or Saturday. And works out good for us. May not work for everybody's schedule, may not be the way that everybody likes to do it. But it works for us. I'm going to show you how we do it. We have two separate ways that we finish our cells. It's two separate processes. They both begin the same way but finish two separate ways. We use a 5-frame finisher and also a double deep 10-frame finisher, which is queen right. It'll be built with a queen on the bottom with an excluder in the middle and a second deep on top. And both ways we start in a 5-frame starter, and our beginning of that process, about a week prior to our first graft, we'll take 5 brood frames. We find older calf brood frames that is getting ready to emerge within the next few days, next day or two, and we'll place 5 frames of brood in our starters. Place those with the bees on them, covered in bees, and we'll also give 1, 2, 3 shakes of bees in it. We get a very strong population in these bees. Try to get more bees in here than this box can hold. All the bees won't stay. Some of them will return, so you want to put more bees than you think's necessary into it to begin with. And as those frames begin to hatch out in the next few days, it'll be a big overabundance of bees in this box. So that's how we start them. We do that a week prior to grafting. And we'll come in and when we graft a week later, we'll come in and check each frame for queen cells, make sure there is no queen cells. If they are, we'll mash those queen cells down and get rid of them. As we graft the next week, the way we'll set these up, we feed with syrup and pollen patties continually on these. When we first make them up, we'll put pollen patties and syrup on them. We feed with a bucket on top of these, a 1-gallon bucket. And we will arrange it a little different as we graft. We'll pull one of the frames out. We'll leave the frame in the middle open. And we always, each week, we'll continually place one new frame of calf brood ready to emerge. We place it against an outside wall. We try to keep frames of pollen on 2 and 4, number 2 and number 4 frames. Our graft frame will be number 3, right in the middle. And these will be pollen frames. We always keep an empty foundation. This is not one, but keep a brand new foundation frame on the other wall. And what that does is gives them something to draw on to keep from drawing these open spots in your queen cells. If they have nowhere to draw, they will draw all these open spots out, and they'll connect all your queen cells, and you'll have to go in and carve those out each week. That can become a real hassle. So that's how we will set up our starters. With these 5-frame queenless starters, we always keep a excluder. We use a plastic queen excluder that we'll cut to fit the front of the hive and fasten it with nails or staples, or in this case duct tape. and that'll keep any rogue queens from entering your starter. With these 5 frames, if we're going to finish in the 5 frame, the max number of cells we'll use in our graft frame is 30. We use 2 bars, JZBZ bars and cell cups. If there's a really strong population, and especially during the flow, you get your best cells during the flow. During that time, with a well-populated hive, we will finish 30 cells in these. Outside of the flow, or if we've let one of these 5 frames, let the population dwindle a little bit, we'll only use 1 bar. We use 1 bar right on the top like that and just finish 15 cells. I found that no matter how populated you get these 5 frames, that 30 cells is about the max they'll draw and finish with really good looking cells. I've tried 45 before, and just the quality always seems to drop off when you go to 45 cells. So we stick with 30 cells max on these 5 frame finishers. If we're going to finish in a double deep queen right finisher, we will start in these 5 frames. We'll graft 30 cells in each one. We will come back the next day and they will be started, and we'll move these frames over to the top box on the queen right finisher. It'll be above that queen excluder, and if they're already started, those queen right double deeps will finish out those cells, and we will use up to 60 cells in a queen right double deep finisher. Use 2 of these frames with 3 JZBZ bars in it. We don't like to put them side by side. We usually take one of these frames in the middle, move it just a little off center, put pollen frame on one side. We will take another pollen frame in the middle, another graft frame right up against it, and another pollen frame. We like to leave them separated by pollen frames, and I feel like that allows good access to feed for those cells. But that's the max we'll do, 60. Usually we just stick to 30 in those double deep queen right finishers, but if we need more cells, they will do a good job with 60 cells. And on these double deep finishers, we'll set them up this way. The bottom box will be where the queen will be located. Leave her continually laying in the bottom to keep the population strong, and to avoid swarming weekly, we will go into the bottom, pull out some brood frames, and move those up above the excluder. We'd leave them on towards the outside, away from the cell cups that we've grafted, and that just keeps providing room in that bottom box for that queen to lay. And as long as you have room in that bottom box, there's a lot less chance that they're going to swarm. Although sometimes, no matter what you do, they still will try to swarm, especially as that population really begins to grow. So to counter that, each week, whether even in the single 5 frames, those and these double deep finishers, every single week we go in and check for queen cells. In this one, we'll go through the top box and the bottom box and check for queen cells every week and eliminate those as we find them. We do feed these also with pollen patties and either a 1 gallon or 2 gallon bucket of syrup on top. Place those pollen patties and syrup as close as we can to these cell cups without allowing the syrup to drip down on those cell cups. Feeding them like that constantly, we even do it during the flow. We'll still continue to feed that syrup. As you do that, you will get an abundance of frames of syrup stored up and capped in these boxes, and the single 5 frame boxes. So we'll each week as we pull cells and inspect these for queen cells, we will pull the cap frames of syrup out, and we can use those to put in some new splits that we start, or give the weak colonies, or we'll even store those up and for later use, for sometime later when we're going to start a colony, or whenever we may need it. So that's one thing to keep in mind is creating room, keeping room in this bottom box for the queen to lay, and keeping your syrup frames from filling the hive up. And that should knock down your swarming tremendously, although you still will have to go in weekly to inspect for queen cells. So one thing that I figured out over time that makes things much simpler and quicker and don't seem like nearly as much of a hassle is to move all of the hives involved in our grafting process to one location together, in one place where you can sit and graft and place your grafting frames, pull cells, pull the frames that you're going to graft from your brooder queen colonies, all in one place without ever moving. And it also makes a big difference to have it at your home. If you can move those all in one location at home where you don't have to travel on the days you're going to graft, makes things a lot easier to do. It becomes very tedious grafting week after week, inspecting these hives weekly, and that all becomes a big burden over time, doing it every single week. And it definitely makes it a lot easier if you can just walk outside at your home and do it all in one place without having to move around. So we go through early in the year and pick out our brooder queen colonies, pick out our brooder queens, and we'll take a split from those with the queen and move a small split to a central location, and we will take some strong colonies and turn into a double deep queen right finisher, and we'll also pull our splits into our 5-frame starter nooks and make those all in one location. Things are a lot easier and less burdensome if you do that. So early on in this season, early spring, we got some different indicators that we look for to pick out our brooder queens. I'm going to make a video later on how we grade our queens and what we look for, the reasons we pick the queens that we do. That'll be in a different video, but we will take those queens and split them off in a small colony into a single 10-frame box, and we try to keep those populations in those boxes populated enough where that queen stays laying really good, but are in no danger of swarming. And as those frames become capped, we will pull some of those to place over into our 5-frame starter nooks, and while leaving enough for her to keep a good population, to keep plenty of frames covered. And we keep her stimulated through the year with light syrup. We feed those brooder queen colonies, keeps a bucket of syrup on top all year. We don't have it right now. We're actually kind of winding up our grafting for the year, but typically our brooder queen colonies will have either 1 gallon or 2 gallon bucket of light syrup, and that'll be less than 1 to 1. Usually a 1 part sugar to 2 parts water syrup, and that creates a hygienic colony, or creates hygienic habits. It establishes that and really stimulates the hive when you feed them that light syrup. They will draw comb good, and queens will lay good with that light syrup on them. It's not completely necessary during the flow, but we do keep it on all the time just for droughts in the nectar flow, and especially before and after the nectar flow. It keeps her laying good where we have no trouble finding enough frames to graft from. And also what that will create is in your frames when you graft, I want to find larvae of the right age, but also larvae that is in a good pool of royal jelly. Makes grafting easier and makes better queens. And without the syrup on there, a lot of the year you will find that larva without hardly any royal jelly, or very little at different times of the year. But if you keep that light syrup on the hive, they will continually be in a really good pool of royal jelly and create good healthy larvae, which will wind up with good healthy queens. So each week when I get ready to graft, I graft in the truck. So I just pull my truck out to my location where I have my starters and breeder queens at. And one tool that we've come up with that it makes grafting in the truck really simple is this little table here. It's built with a piece of aluminum sheet metal with a ledge turned up. This is where I lay my JZBZ cell bars right here. Got 2 1/4-20 bolts in each end of the top side. That's where the frame ledge is set and holds my graft frame on the face of this. JZBZ queen cell bars, they lay right here. I just graft from the frame right into the cell bar right there, and it'll be right in my lap. And this is designed with these little ears on the back side that hangs right over my steering wheel. So this is in my lap and a really good position to graft from. And we don't have to move to inside a building with the graft frame, the frame from the breeder queen. It's all just right in our lap in our truck. Makes it really easy and simple to do. We use 2-frame and 3-frame mating nucs. They operate basically the same, but there's a little difference in the 2 processes that we use on them. No matter what we use, if it's outside of the nectar flow, we feed syrup. We keep them some syrup on the hives pretty regular, and that helps with your queen acceptance. And but during the flow, we don't feed. That'll pack your hive out too much and leave the new queen without enough room to lay. Keep small entrances on our hives. You can see on that 2-frame hive how small of an entrance there is, and there's also small entrances made on our 3 frames. That helps out a lot with robbing in these small hives outside of the flow, and that small entrance is just a lot easier to guard. Cuts down on your robbing a lot. The 3-framers, it gives a little more room in management, a little easier to manage. It gives you an extra frame. 2-framers are a little bit tougher to manage. You have to be a little more weary of the population to not let the population get too high and cause them to swarm. But you do want to keep good population in these hives. A good population of bees will have better success at becoming queen right. And also placing these hives randomly, that helps with queen right. And also painting them up different colors will help your success with becoming queen right. If you line them up in straight rows, that will always decrease your success rate. So just place them out at random, place them different directions, facing different directions, painted up with different colors. You can place them in various groups, but anyway you can make them look different from one another will raise your success rate tremendously. So you can pull cells anytime after day 9. We start counting at day 1 when the egg is laid. It's an egg for 3 days. On day 4, that egg emerges into a larva, and we graft larvae at that age. So 5 days later, those cells will be capped, and you can pull it at any time after that, and place into an incubator, or you can leave it in the finisher until they are ripe and ready to use. That's your choice. There's a little difference in those 2 processes. We graft on Tuesdays, and that allows our cells to be ready to use on the second weekend after that. So that way we can make our splits on Friday and Saturday and place cells after that on the weekend. Timing of your cell emergence will be affected a little bit by how you manage that, whether you place in an incubator or leave in a finisher. I leave the incubator at around 92 degrees, 92.5 is what I like to hold them at. That buys me a little bit more time. That holds them till till on into day 16. Leaving them in a queen right finisher or in a 5-frame finisher will cause them to emerge a little bit earlier. Not so much during the early part of the year, but as the summer draws on and the days get hotter and hotter, once it reaches up into the 90s, 90 degrees, 95 degrees, or even hotter, that'll cause those cells to emerge a little faster. Once you start seeing heavy bearding on the front of your hives, you can account for those queen cells to start emerging on day 15. So consider that in your timing of pulling cells and placing into splits. We're very careful to manage the populations in these hives to not let them overpopulate and swarm, but keep a good population, at least enough to cover the frames that are in that hive. It can become a little difficult at times to manage that population, but a good population does help with your queen right success, but overpopulation will cause them to swarm and cause issues also. So you can manipulate that by moving frames around, pulling frames of bees out, pulling frames of brood out. We pull our queens after 3 weeks after those cells emerge. We go in and pull our queens out, and come back the next day and replace with a new ripe queen cell. And that's a good time to use a newly mated queen. About 24 days old is the prime age for your best introduction success. So that also gives a good amount of time for that queen to prove herself, to prove to be a good layer, and she should have at least some capped brood in there to prove that she's a well-mated queen, and give you a good laying pattern to judge her by. When we pull the queens, we'll evaluate the bee population, and like I said, we'll move brood frames with the bees. If the population is too high, you got to account for that brood emerging this left in that hive also. You don't, if they overpopulate that hive with those emerging bees before you get in there and pull the queen on the next round, they could swarm before that time happens. And another way that we can manipulate the population on some of the nucs that are not queen right, especially that doesn't become queen right, the population will fall down, and we'll need to increase that population. Some ways that we do that is the more populated hives, we'll pull frames of brood and bees out of those and move them into the less populated hives. And also another good way is to moving boxes around. You can take a mating nuc that has a strong population and swap positions with a less populated colony, and that allows those foragers to all move into that less populated colony and reduce from the more populated colony. That's another good way to manipulate the population of your hives. So this is our 2-frame mating nucs, and this is how we build our 3-frame mating nucs. Our 3-framers are 3 single 3-frame colonies. Each bay has 3 separate frames and separated by these concrete boards. And when we first build them, we'll just put 1 frame of brood with the bees covering the frame into this, with a 2nd frame being just new foundation. We'll do the same in each 3-framer. We will take a frame of capped brood with 2 frames of foundation. A lot of times in these we may give an extra shake, especially early in the year when temperatures at night are getting down cold still. We will definitely put a shake of bees even in the 2-framers. That way that frame of brood is well covered with bees to keep them warm during the cold night temperatures. These 3-framers are just placed on a regular bottom board, but we build a bottom board that allows entrances on the bottom on opposite sides. So the 2 outside colonies will have an entrance on the same side. The middle colony will have an entrance on the opposite side. And we'll take these and these 3 framers and paint different colors above the entrances to help the queens find the right colony to come back to. And these 2 framers are all completely painted up different colors and have different colored lids, so that helps also. The 2 framers are a little bit tougher to manage because you only have 2 frames to manipulate them by. You always have to leave a frame of brood in to keep the population going, so that only allows you 1 frame to pull out. So, whereas the 3 framers gives you an extra frame, you can pull 1 frame or 2 frames, and also it takes a little more time to overcrowd that colony too, to swarm. So it gives you a little more time, a little more play in these, and also leaves you with a stronger population overall, which helps with becoming queen right. That will help your success. As I said before, when we pull these mated queens from these hives, I like to wait and come back the next day. I get population manipulated and get them ready for the next round. The day that I pull the queens, I like to come back the next day and place the new ripe queen cells into the colonies. I do that just by putting the cell right in between 2 top bars, right on the top of the hive. You can place the cell immediately as you pull the queen cell. If I do that, I like to use cell protectors just to kind of help with tearing down of the new cells. As I use those cells, I check each one individually and make sure those cells are good cells. You can usually see the larva in the top of that JZBZ cup. If not, a lot of times they're waxed up too much to be able to see through it. If I'm not able to see it, you can turn that cell upside down and give it just a little bit of a shake, and if you feel that queen jiggling in there, that's usually a good cell. And by that time, at their age, they're tough, they're well developed, and you're not going to harm that queen by just giving a gentle shake. So we do that and make sure that each queen we place is still a good cell. At the end of the season, when we are finished mating queens, I like to keep my mating nooks in place and overwinter them right in place of where I'll be using them the next season. So with the 2 framers, it's a little more difficult. I pull all the frames and bees out of these and combine them with two or three more 2 framers into one single 10 frame colony. With these 3 framers, all that I have to do is I pull all the queens except 1. I'll leave 1 mated queen behind and just pull these dividers out and make one combined colony. I had to play these had 9 frames. I placed 1 more frame in, and that leaves a 10 frame colony in place. A good well populated colony, ready to overwinter. And come in the next spring, all that I've got to do is pull that queen. I'll pull some frames of brood and bees out and place these right back in place. Just drop them right back in place where they're at, and they are ready to go. I'll come back the next day, place a cell in each one, and that's a very simplified process. You never have to move bees from another location to start these. I'm Brad Kelly with Chilton Bee Company. I want to thank you for watching our videos. I would appreciate it if you would like our videos, share our videos, and subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. You can find my contact info at chiltonbee.com. Thank you for watching.